Hey, let's talk EVE Online. This is Matterall. It's Tuesday, August 4th, 2020. And just now, we are finding out that Metaliminal Storms are on their way to EVE Online, which are chaotic storms of abyssal energy that will be appearing randomly in nullsec space this August.
Yay, environmentals.
Yeah, I'm here with, let's see here, we got a few people. Caleb, you just heard from. Tiberius. Arya's here. Whoa. The channel's grown. You'll be hearing from various voices. I'll try to name them when they talk.
Welcome to a dev blog day.
Dev blog day, yeah. We have Rich, Tiberius, Gregorian, Spod, Caleb. What happened to Bard Ghost? He was just here.
He's just lurking. Cable's here, Rich here,
Cable.
Tiberius here.
And Arius. Anyway, welcome, guys. Let's talk about EVE Online. So this dev announcement just dropped here. Let's just get everybody on the same page. There it is. These are called Metaliminal Storms. It's a new update. It's an announcement of something that is coming soon. It's not here yet, and I'll read it for you. Weathered Capsuleers. Chaotic storms of abyssal energy called Metaliminal Storms will begin appearing randomly in nullsec space this August when the Metaliminal Storms update goes live. As an unexpected side effect of Triglavian invasion, these roaming storms will move slowly between star systems via the Gate network. The Wandering Storm will apply system effects not unlike those seen in Wormhole Space and Abyssal Dead Space, with a core of systems that contain the strongest effects, as well as periphery of additional star systems exhibiting weaker versions of those effects also. These storms will affect Capsuleer vessels in a number of ways, providing new challenges and opportunities across nullsec frontiers. In addition to the system effects, the core systems will also have additional sites spawning that can be discovered by Capsuleers who venture into the storm for potential riches.
This is glorious. This is exactly what is needed. This is the type of change that EVE needs instead of something like Blackout.
See, I'm on the opposite end of beliefs here. All I can say is, what were they thinking? Especially with the CSM members stating that they do not want changes that will affect the game in a way that changes the war.
That's what cracks me up the most.
No, Rich.
That's what cracks me up the most.
I'm not even involved in this war, and I find these changes rather curious. Aureus, are you ready for your scram to hit 40-kilometer range?
Yeah, for everyone.
Pretty crazy.
It won't matter. But this is hilarious, right?
I'm looking at a scram range from the on an Arazu, though. That's kind of sexy.
Let's start right there, because I think Rich put his finger on one of the funnier aspects of this, which is like the CSM says, hey, we just got here, and we want to make sure that you guys don't mess up this war that we started like you did last time with drifters. So no major changes in the middle of a war.
Here comes the rain again.
Yeah, and
All this means is that some days a different doctrine will get pinged for the war.
And a lightning bolt comes out of the sky and just strikes the ground and kills everything. Anyway, it's fantastic.
I've been comparing this war with the Trojan War. I now need to start talking about Agincourt instead, because there's going to be mud plains instead of flood plains.
Well, the FA will tell you now that tonight's fleet is cancelled due to a rain.
This is hilarious. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about the feature in isolation. Forget the war. We'll come back to that. But what do you guys think?
I think it's exactly what was needed, especially because it's got so much potential granularity, right? There's so many levels and degrees that they can implement this in. It's not necessarily just going to be like everywhere there's this massive weather. It's something that's going to be dynamic. It's going to be moving. It's going to potentially be in different scales and in different types of effects. So you're going to have this, today it's a PvE day because the weather outside is not for actually PvPing and things like that. You're basically going to, what's that phrase, there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad attire. And this is going to be a factor now in EVE Online, and I love this. This is also back to something that Tiberius brought up, but I'm going to let him do that himself.
Yeah, so I think my biggest issue with this is that this kind of takes away from it's another feature that they're going to take away from JSpace and as a unique feature to a certain extent. And it's just, I don't know, it feels kind of a cheap almost to a certain extent. It's obviously a very unique and good feature for nullsec, but it's, I don't know, it seems kind of stale, and it also kind of seems counterintuitive to some of the things that they're trying to accomplish. But I mean, that's my 2 cents. I'm a little biased on that, but
I agree with that.
I think you're a little bit right on the fact that it plays down the value or the quality of wormholes potentially. But I do think that there's a potential upside, because if wormhole stuff, so basically T3, will have things that basically counters these weather effects, right? The effectiveness of an umbrella, right? An actual physical one, not the ship umbrellas in EVE. If you can have those special things that are produced in wormholes, and because wormholes live in perpetual rain floods, right? They will have ships that can counter that and can still operate fully and functionally in space. And that becomes a new export value from wormhole space. That means that there's a potential upside. But I am just hoping that CCP will do something like that. I'm definitely not expecting it. I mean, if something like that does not show up, it does undermine and undervalue the whole wormhole thing.
Arias, we'll let you go in just a second, Aris. But where can we get some details about how this is going to work and what it's going to do? Because we're hearing that, this will stop cloaky camping to some degree.
There are details posted.
Yeah, so if you scroll down, it shows on the thing. It shows the different effects. So one is
scroll down on the thing. Is
a huge nerf to one of them is a huge nerf to remote and armor repair mount.
Oh, so it's in the notes. I see.
Yeah, Metaliminal is
holy cow! Look at all this. Okay, didn't see this.
Yeah.
So hold on, let me just direct people to this, and we'll give a link right now to the people who are watching. So we'll put in show notes.
Currently, there's only 2 effects. One of them is a plus 25% shield HP, and another one is a plus 25% armor HP.
The forum post has 4 different weather types and strong and weak for each of them.
Oh, sorry. There's 4. I thought there was 4 phases of each one, not 2 for each. There's a strong and a weak of each storm.
Yeah, so electrical has no cloaking, but better for exploration.
Now, this is going to have some interesting changes. Because you see here, 100% warp scrambler disruption range. This has got some implications, because this means that somebody could potentially scramble a ship out of the range of close-range weapons. And AP, I know you fire a lot of close-range, guns, ships with close-range guns. What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, it's chaotic, right? 100%. That certainly changes things.
That's Arias.
Fleet, I can point you at over 100 kilometers. That's crazy.
That's Arias.
Not to say, points can go 150 suddenly.
That's Cable. Okay,
Sorry.
let's go back and reset, just because we get more people in here talking about this. But CCP Fozzie is describing in more detail inside the forums what these storms are going to look like. They're metaliminal storms. They're abyssal caused. They will appear in nullsec only so far. We don't know if they'll hit adjacent systems in lowsec or anything like that yet.
They will.
They will. Okay, so we do know. So they will appear in nullsec, but if it's a neighboring lowsec system, it will be affected by residual effects that are weaker than the system that's actually experiencing the storm. And some of the effects...
It will actually spill into high sec as well.
Or high sec. Okay.
Yeah, I've read that as well. That's actually where I disagree. I think I like the idea that this will spill over maybe into low sec, but I think spilling over into high sec might be just a little bit too much.
Okay,
I like to actually see that change.
The point is that you're going to have systems in null sec with storms, and there'll be systems nearby that will have residual effects. In other words, the storm is most intense in one system, but it will permeate out into neighboring systems. And they will follow the gates. That's what I don't understand. What gates are we talking about?
Stargates.
Is it stargates or is it abyssal gates? Or it has to be stargates because there are no abyssal gates in nullsec, right?
What are abyssal gates?
The ones that aren't they're abyssal gates. They don't exist yet? Am I ahead of myself? All right.
Do you mean wormholes?
No. You know, the latest abyssal invasions, they appeared to be building gates in those systems. Has anything come of that? Never mind. That's off track.
Not familiar.
All right. So following gates, which I guess just means what? Why do they put that detail in there?
That's just a mechanic for roaming, right?
Moving.
To move them around. They are basically roaming like AI's base, right?
Oh, I see. So they won't just appear randomly. They'll actually move.
So consider the mechanics surrounding incursions, like Sancha incursions and Triglavian incursions. Those are randomized, and they pop up and they disappear. These will be different, and that the focal point of the storm will move gradually with a certain frequency that's set in the dev block to be 24 to 48 hours. And it will move gradually at that frequency by jumping a gate, a stargate.
Yeah, this is important. Sorry about that. This is important because geography is defined very differently in the game. So usually with geography, you're looking at a three-dimensional map, and you talk about AU ranges, you talk about jump ranges for capitals. They're specifically calling out that the storms are not ranges based on a three-dimensional map. They actually follow stargates, so that as a player, you can predict and watch the movement as this goes from system to system. It also means that if your next jump is a regional gate that's a long distance, light years from where you are on the map, it will actually follow that gate. So it could cross like into Delve or out of Delve.
I'm just going to mention one thing that I think is not just vital, but it's not a nice to have, it's a need to have. This needs to be something we can call on APIs. And we need to be able to actually have it on our own maps, and it also needs to be in the actual in-game map.
Yeah. Okay. So this is really cool because the feature means that you'll see the storms on the map, and you'll see them coming, which is really interesting. So it's not like what happened the other day. I think as Fountain was being evacuated by the Imperium. All of a sudden, they couldn't jump to a certain system because incursions appeared out of nowhere. And so that was a big surprise to them. So you will see this storm coming, which I think is really cool because kind of like a death cloud lurking is what it feels like.
Tornado season.
Yeah, and we will definitely have weather reports, as someone said here. Day Casper says, I expect a TIS weather report once this goes live. Absolutely. This is what we've been waiting for. All right. So again, just reframing it, storms are coming. They will create various effects. We're looking at some of them here. We'll talk about those next. The storms will be in nullsec only, but they may spill over into neighboring systems, including lowsec, highsec. And these storms will travel along gates, so you will see them coming, you will see them moving around the map. I wasn't able to read the stuff, but do we know the speed of the movement or anything like that?
24 to 48 hours, right? Is about the movement speed.
Yeah, that's what there's no set time, but that's specifically said that it's between 12 and 48 hours.
Right here, 12 and 48 hours. And it's a 5 jump. Sorry, it's 5 jumps away from your home system. So you may feel it 5 jumps away.
We don't know the actual sizes, right? But since there's a strong and a weak thing, there will most likely be, the whole spillover thing will be that the center will be of a certain size, and then the adjacent systems will have the weaker effects, right? And then you basically have this whole anomaly thing, the whole weather system will be moving through the gates and affecting the next systems.
That's cool. So a day or two. Okay, so it says here, if the edge of the storm is currently 5 jumps away from your home system, you'll know that the soonest it can possibly reach you is 5 days. But you know for sure that it will come towards you. Oh, but you don't know for sure if it's going to come towards you or veer in a different direction. Yeah, that's why you do see it coming, but it's also going to be very random because every system has multiple entrances, just about. Not every, but most.
I'm looking forward to that aspect because this is one of those things that we can't really know exactly how this algorithm is going to behave live. It might actually have some weird side effects, like weather system getting stuck in a dead end system or something like that, where it almost can't get out, or keep randomly going back into the dead end instead of actually moving out of it. It's just going to be exciting to see how well they program this and how many potential bugs and weird things are going to happen.
Okay, let me make something clear here that I may have confused. This is an example, 5 system example. If you see it, if the storm is 5 systems away from you, it'll only ever get to you in 5 days. That's to show the speed of the storm traveling. When I said that it covers 5 systems, that was inaccurate. I don't know how big these storms are.
And that's the soonest it will reach you in that example is 5 days.
Yeah.
This moves 24 to 48 hours. So there's a bit of a variable time in which the storm may move.
It's also going to depend on where the eye of it is, right? So if it's got a reach of, say, 1 jump, right, then a weather system that's in a path that's linear will potentially only affect 3 systems. But if it gets into, say, a center thing in a constellation, it can pretty much have a central effect and then span the entire constellation pretty much because it's all 1 jumps, right?
Yeah, we don't know how big the storms are, do we? It's not in there, right?
No, we don't. But it is really about how much range will they have from the strong core and outwards, right? So this is what I'm saying. Say if it hits something like Gita, it would potentially affect, 7, 8 systems? Because there's that many adjacent ones.
Yeah. All right. I think we got the basics out there. There are no sizes that we know of yet. I wonder if there'll be various sizes, like some storms bigger than others. That would be cool. That would really add some texture to it.
Well, they have the strong storm and the weak storm currently.
Oh, okay.
The strong storm is, and the weak storm is about, 40% of that strength.
Right. So we have strong storms and weak storms as far as intensity, but we don't know their size. But it would make sense that the stronger storms were bigger, covered more territory.
I reckon the stronger storm is, and even the weaker storm, they're both strong enough to pretty much cancel entire fleets out. Like if somebody has a CTA out and the system that they're going to be fighting goes through one of these storms, there is potential if they can't adapt to it, they need to cancel it because of the sheer effects of it.
Yeah, FCs must be freaking out right now because, being an FC is a matter of quick decision making with as much situational awareness as you can possibly get. That's how you're an FC. You figure out what situation you're in and how to proceed or how to withdraw. And this is a whole nother variable to that.
Yeah, the Metaliminal Plasma one, that looks like it's kind of like a mix of a Magnetar and a Wolf Riot.
The bonus weapon damage, bonus armor health, and bonus missile fighter explosion radius. I don't like that at all. That is worrying.
Yeah, I like the idea of space weather, but
I can't wait to drop Blop's Legions with that. That's going to be cancer.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily sure I like these particular effects.
I don't quite understand the electrical storm. You get bonus probe strength, but you can't cloak. It's beggars belief. I don't understand this.
It's for running around in a heron and grabbing relic sites.
Are we talking about storm chasing? Sorry.
Torvald Torvald
electrical
gives us the
storm.
range of the storms.
Okay.
Just real quick, because we asked this question earlier.
Yeah.
So each storm will have a core system, and that's the strongest effect. One jump away from the core system will also have the strongest effect. And then systems 2 and 3 jumps away will have the weakest effect. So this gives us the radius of how large a storm could be. So even though that core system is a null-sec system, up to 3 jumps away are impacted by the storm.
That's great. Okay, thanks for that. Where'd you see that? Is that in the comments somewhere?
It's in the chat.
Great. That's great.
Thank you, Torvald.
Yeah, thanks,
So in the
Torvald.
in the average region, this storm would cover anywhere between a quarter to, well, a third of the region.
Mhm.
Can we take a small second and appreciate the fact that they've done an actual negative feedback thing with 20% reduction in mining lasers, but then spawning an extra ore anomaly? I think that's just amazing.
Yeah, it's it means that you're. Wait, isn't that shorter cycle time?
That's what I'm saying. It's got one thing that's going down and one thing that's going up, which is basically the definition of negative feedback systems. This is just awesome. This is exactly the type of stuff that I've been waiting for, and this is showing that they're starting to think like that. It's really good.
I would think that the mining cycle laser time going down by 25% means you mine faster.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
It
storm's
does.
coming. Get out there, you guys. Mine those rocks.
Well, so it's not a debuff.
What's interesting is there
It's
is
a mega buff.
So
It's a
it's a
massive
buff.
mining buff.
Yeah.
there isn't much for damage projection changes here. Well, sorry, damage projection buffs. It's sorry.
Yeah.
No, actually, I read it wrong. There is a damage projection one, but what's interesting is there's only the changes to the damage projection. It's kind of counterintuitive.
Well-
So the feedback loop is not in the mining. It's the you mining faster, you get more anomalies, but then you are losing resistances. You're losing your local rep amount, and anyone coming in to tackle you has a bonus in scan resolution.
I gotta be honest with you though. The warp speed and the scan res, I don't think it's gonna matter because people still show up in local 4 to 5 seconds before you load grid, so it's not really gonna make that much of a difference.
Not just that, we also still have the same hard limited warp deceleration speed of maximum 2 AU a second, which means it doesn't matter how fast you can get into warp, it matters how fast you can get out of warp.
And you'll be mining fast enough to replace those procurers anyway.
So
All right,
there's
let's make that all understandable, because you propeller heads are driving me crazy. Like, let's talk about what that means to people who are looking at this thinking like, how's this going to affect my game style in a more basic way?
All right. Essentially, it means
go ahead, Kate.
that let's say I'm or you, because I don't mind, you are a miner in a null block or wherever you are in low-sec or wherever you are. You're sitting in the mining, you're having fun with your friends, you're sitting on comms, and suddenly in local you see me. I am in a saber in front of my roaming group, and I obviously want to catch you so we can kill you and have fun at your expense. Warp acceleration will give us, obviously, make us arrive at your location faster, assuming we can find you before you actually leave the grid, because you will see us at local regardless. But because there is a set basic limit in the game of deceleration, it means that even if you boost my saber that already goes 8 AU a second to 16 AU a second, which would be vastly faster than anything like normal speed, faster than even current interceptors, it means that it won't really affect anything, because if I'm warping 10 AU, having 16 AU warp speed won't really matter, because I still have to do the same time it takes to decelerate that I normally would, because that's not affected. So it won't have any huge impact.
Yes, at a high level, there are 4 different storms. 2 of the storms incentivize PvE activities. They also incentivize those that would hunt those PvE
Interesting.
And that's important. So like the mining example, you're incentivized to mine because there are more sites and you mine faster, but it also makes you weaker in certain areas, which means if you want to hunt those people, this will incentivize you to go out. So the other two change combat in terms of some aspects of ship combat changes and goes down, some goes up. So it may alter what type of ships and doctrines you may use when those other two storms are present.
Well, if we take a look at the gamma ray storm, I'm going to go ahead and say if you want to go chase gamma rays, I would suggest you stock up on the Mortis Legion ships right now and passive tanks. This gamma ray storm, it benefits passive tanks. It benefits anybody that tackles. The signature radius is going to be a problem, but if you take a look at that, this storm completely destroys any kind of fleet that wants to use Logi, because it just ruins your remote shield and remote armor rep.
And for the plasma, I'm thinking the first weapon I'd go with would be Rapid Light Missile Launcher.
Now, I'm taking a look at the Gamma Ray Storm here, and if you're in, say, an Ortherus and you're in the Strong Storm, your scram will go out to, if you're using
100 kilometers.
Quite a nice expensive scram. I'm talking scram, not point. Your scram will go well over... over 30 kilometers scram.
It's
well over 40.
40, yeah.
I already did it, and I linked the image of it. It's literally 90 kilometers for 70 kilometers for a faction scram.
On a latch?
On an Arazu. A true Sanchez scram will go 70.6 kilometers heated.
Is that linked?
Yes.
All right. You guys, thanks for the details. We have CCP Fozzie in chat as well. So we're trying to answer questions now and inside of chat and also here. Ari, I really like that summary you put together. So, and I love the idea of storm chasing in order to mine faster. And then people chasing those storm chasers in order to kill them. The life cycles here are really interesting.
It's going to be the same for everything, right? For PvP and for all types of PvE, that you can actually have this storm chaser attitude that you will specialize to actually be in the storm. This is back to what I said to Tiberius, that if there is this, call it, way of specializing around these storms, especially using T3 stuff, it becomes a practice. It becomes an actual occupation, right?
Yeah.
I don't see somebody chasing around a specific storm just to do combat in there. I don't think that's prudent. If somebody were to come across it, then they could potentially reship and fight in that space particularly. But for somebody to exclusively seek to fight in one space, it's not a pragmatic choice of playstyle, in my opinion, and I don't see that happening.
All right, so
with your specialized fleet, regardless of whether it's for PvE or PvP, I'm definitely seeing that happening.
Yeah, Fozzie's answering questions in chat. So what we'll do is we'll both discuss with the people we have here, which are all brilliant people, and actually read out some of the stuff that Fozzie's answering in chat as well, because he's doing a Q&A like in our chat. Fozzie, you're welcome to come on if you want. And we can read out these questions and answer them on air. But if you only want to type, that's cool too. We'll read them out. Okay.
I want Dunk to come in and gloat about the cloaky thing.
The cloaky thing is the biggest mistake of this.
It's the greatest thing.
What's the cloaky thing, and then the pros and cons?
Electrical storms do not allow cloaking.
Any of them, or just the electrical version of them?
Electrical storms. Just electrical.
So if you live in a system where there's electrical storms, you could just go ahead and there's no cloaky camping. You can rat and do all that away without the fear of cloaky camping. I think the entire update, looking at all of these changes, I think is a mistake. Good God, what were they thinking? Especially with the war.
Shrooms. My dude.
I like the theme that's working here, though. Electrical storm short-circuiting or just affecting scanners and cloaking devices makes sense, because also thematically, it's lightning, which lights up the entire dark sky, and so you'll be able to see in the dark, and that makes a lot of sense to me. Okay,
I
well,
like the
Clifton
idea.
one is an Explorer PVE related one. So there's a bonus to virus coherence, and I'm not an Explorer, so I don't know if 25 virus coherence is a really big buff. But
Massive
the downside is if you're exploring, you're doing this sort of thing, you can't cloak. And that's one of the strategies they say, if you're going to go and explore into nullsec, make sure you can cloak. So now do you explore these sites in the storm with this bonus, knowing that you've lost some of your defense?
I just love this. Of course, it has to be Fozzie behind it because I think he's the one spokesman for moon mining, which is another thing I just loved. These are the best parts of EVE Online to me, is these really imaginative features.
To give you an
I
idea
must
of
say that
how
it's weird, right? This could mess up the whole war thing a lot.
To give you an idea how strong 25 virus coherence is, that's the equivalent of adding one more mid slot, or even 2 mid slots worth of virus modules. That's massive. With that amount, you can pretty much click through the sites without brain dead, pretty much.
All right, let's see if we can catch up with some Fozzie comments. He says here, and this is one of the developers that's behind it, and he's explaining it and giving more details out. You can also go to EVE forums where there is a thread, and there'll be plenty of comments there. You should probably see hundreds of comments in the next week or so. Fozzie says, actually, you can tank more, Dunkdinkle, since the reduction in rep time cycle. So that was a question about rep time. Although you burn cap faster, that's another thing, right? That's an offset. Energy repairing yourself is spent faster. And then we have some questions for Fozzie. This one from Gaurav says, does the reduction in rep cycle affect heating as well? And he answers, you'll take more heat damage due to faster cycles.
I like the fact that it seems that there's a downside, there's a chaos side that you can adapt around, and then there's an upside, right? On all of these. I really think this is a little bit of genius.
Yeah, Fozzie also says the movement of these storms, I suppose, will be independent of downtime. Now that's interesting. So it won't be the storm is here for a day at downtime. It will change like everything else that spawns in the game. This can move in the middle of the day. This can move at any time between 24 and 48 hours of when it arrived.
This is a good upgrade to Blackout. During Blackout, when locals were removed, there was a great incentive to PvP, but there wasn't a lot to the PvE side. And a lot of folks who would PvE in nullsec said, why should I bother playing this game? I got no bonus. It's all downside for me. So this is a change where some of these storms give you a PvE upside, but also gives a PvP upside. And then the other two, it's going to just change ships. Like one of them where turret takes a penalty, but missiles get a bonus.
Yeah. So Fozzie's multitasking, so he's going to stay in text. We'll do our best to read questions to him. If you have questions to him, he'll probably be reading text, so put it in there, and we'll read out the results of your question.
Right. Well, for the PvPers within this channel, do you see this as a net upside or a net downside? Cable, AP,
Terrible.
Jordan.
I don't know. I'm a little bit skeptical with the mining changes because of like the like what we described earlier with the warp deceleration and like showing up in local, 5 to 6 seconds before you can even load grid in some cases. It just doesn't, like, I get why they added them. There's like the scan resolution and the warp speed just doesn't seem like it's enough of a comparable buff to PvPers in regards to the mining buffs. The mining buffs, especially in the strong storm, are pretty significant. So
I'm just amazed that Fozzie didn't take the chance to actually make one of these weather systems remove local chat.
Yeah, well, I mean, we saw what happened last time we got local deleted, right? So I like the plasma stuff. I'm not. I get the point behind the gamma ray storm, and kind of spicing up the meta a little bit. I feel like that they're a step in the right direction. My hope is that CCP refines their storms and maybe makes new types of weather and kind of maybe changes things around, figuring out like what works, what doesn't. I just hope that these are not like permanent changes. I hope it seems to me like they're on the right track with weather. And this is probably a good test bed to see where it's at. I just hope that these ones are not permanent for like the next 6 months to a year. I hope that they will be a little more dynamic and maybe tweak them a little bit depending upon what the results have been with the weather.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a question by Mr. Hutter here that says, is this negative 90% remote rep permanent, or is that fixed, or are you guys going to tweak some of these adjustments? And so Fozzie answers, Mr. Hutter, the numbers can be adjusted if we see good reason to adjust them. The negative 90% remote rep is designed to be somewhat experimental and dramatic, balanced by the fact that it only applies to the small number of systems at a time. If it turns out not to be fun, we can remove or adjust it. But we've had requests from CSM to dramatically reduce Logi in nullsec for a while, so we wanted to try out and see how this works out in a limited area.
Yeah, and it's what, 8 systems? I think that's a fair test bed. Enough to give data and not enough to actually become a problem.
Yeah. So yeah, you're going to have adjustments. This is neat because the system may be permanent, but the effects may be different.
As they want to work on
them.
different types of effects, because this idea is really good. I'm just not sure I like all the effects.
So Cable asks Fozzie, are you guys looking at increasing the deceleration hard limit so the warp speed buff actually means something? To which Fozzie answers, no current plan to adjust deceleration, but double warp speed still matters quite a bit, especially combined with the fact that hunters will know where these systems are. Does that answer your question, Cable?
Partly, but not really. The problem with that answer is that it won't have an effect on interceptors or interdictors because they're already at the point where they're like tapped out, like, you know, they're at the high limit. The only point where this warp speed will have an impact if we're in systems that are literally like 40 plus AU wide. That's the only point where it'll matter, because at that point the difference is going to literally be a second or two, and anything below that, it won't have an impact. Consider
the fact that it benefits larger ships than smaller ships, and perhaps it's more encouraging, because if you increase the cap, like everything's benefiting in like you said, the absolute warps, like top warp speed, but in the regards to the acceleration, larger ships benefit much more than smaller ships, and so I think it's kind of cool because it might encourage more people to fly battleships.
I agree that for larger ships, I agree. Yes, then there it's obviously a buff. My problem just lies with it won't have any like real impact, because even if you're saying a Macarial or whatever, it already goes, what is it, 5 AU a second or something like that on a normal rolling Macarial. Can't remember exactly what it is. Even with that speed, the difference won't really matter like a huge amount, because if you get 10 AU a second, yes, you are warping at an interceptor speed and distance. But again, any system where you will actually see this impact you has to be more than 10 AU at minimum before it has any impact whatsoever. It has to be more than 50 AU across even, or you have to do that long distance warps at least for it to actually impact you.
Well, that's when it comes to like topography and stuff, I guess. Like, not every system's affected the same way. I don't know. I don't mind it. I feel as though you could be looking way too far into it. Like, for that niche case of scepters and stuff, yeah, nothing changes, but nothing changes. I guess that's not the end of the world.
What ships are you going to run? Well, what ships are you going to see more due to these changes? What ships would you want to pick up to use in these storms? I've already mentioned the Orthrus. I think
Barghest?
with Barghest, oh yeah. I think with the Plasma Firestorm, the one with the bonus damage and the bonus missile, sacrilegious.
Yeah, actually, I'm liking the Sacrilege versus Munin matchup in the Plasma Storm.
Yeah, or rapid light missile launcher armor ships.
Although a plus 50% weapon damage to a Munin fleet, that's a little scary.
Reduced tracking speed. AP, do you got any ships you want to run in these?
I don't know. Like the thing that I like about this change, just in general, is that it rewards players and groups that are extremely flexible and have a wide variety of things and can theory craft on the fly. And so I think it's different. Tiberia's brought up the point that it's sort of unlike wormholes and that the effects are static. And that when you live in a wormhole and you have this static effect that's not going anywhere, it really promotes groups, particularly like anyone who's familiar with wormholes will probably recall that Wolfrayet groups tend to stock up on lots of light weapon ships. So things like rapid lights on cruisers, rapid light Serbs, and they just have
rapid light prophecies.
Sure. All that good stuff. You seem to, of course, it makes sense to have your whole defense and stuff, your fleets, because it's your home field advantage, right? But this is almost the exact opposite. So you have these different effects, right? And so wormhole groups that go to nullsec or nullsec groups that reside in nullsec, if they want to be prepared for these weather and stuff, these weather effects, then they need to be a little bit more flexible, right? And theory craft on the fly. And that's what I think is so great about the change. What will end up happening is that the players and groups that are much stronger in terms of like either skill points or, game experience or theory crafting knowledge, they'll be able to prey on those that are less adapted and less equipped for this weather.
One thing I really enjoy about this change in general is that 3 of the 4 weather systems are specifically designed. They have design elements in them for PvP. I have to actually really agree with RS here with the exotic one. I didn't even really think about the fact that this may, the exotic storms themselves may promote battleship fleets. We may actually see battleship fleets for the first time in years, actual decent good battleship fleets. Or Tech 1 battleship fleets. Obviously, there's plenty of them going on right now, but, spur of the moment battleship fleets as opposed to the heavy assault cruiser meta, which has dominated the game for so long now. So, I really appreciate the fact that CCP spent time to kind of do that, and that it's not all entirely, they obviously have made some concessions to people who are more oriented on PvE, but I appreciate the fact that they have kept PvP in mind for the vast majority of what they've got going on here.
So I don't know if I'd call them concessions.
So hold on a second, Ars. Just want to confirm.
You're motivating
something.
People to do so many different.
Are you able to hear me? Hold on one second. You can't hear me, right? Everybody can hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, good. All right. I just want to confirm a couple things. One is that Fozzie says that, here it is. He says they'll have a central system that is these storms and affect the systems within 3 jumps from that one central system. So we had talked about that before, but this is basically like a 4-system spread.
That's large. That's fucking large.
Yeah. So in every direction, basically, from that core system, 3 systems will be affected. And also, a good question here from RJ Fozzie, if you're listening, do these effects affect NPCs? Go ahead, RS, you were saying?
Let's hear from that player really quickly. The question you asked.
Oh, RJ.
They affect NPCs?
He's actually not in here. He's texting. I'm reading stuff in text. It's
my guess is no, because it could be because the abyssal weather affects NPCs, but wormhole weather does not. So I guess it's kind of a 50-50 shot whether it does or not.
I have to wait for the reply.
Yeah. Oh yeah, let's see if Foz actually has something to say about it.
What was I saying?
But 3 jumps range is potentially half a region, right? In some cases.
8 jumps? No, it's only going to be 3 to the left, 3 to the right. So what is that? 7?
That's 6, 7 jumps circumference. That can almost affect half a region.
CCP signal
based, not light year based.
CCP signal says it affects 3 jumps out from the central system, meaning it could affect way more than 4 systems since it spreads out from each system. Thanks, Signal. We were just figuring that out. It's really kind of a spread of 7 systems, with the eye of the storm being the middle of the 7 systems in every direction. So yeah, these are big.
Like if we see the eye of the storm being somewhere in the center of catch, such as the infamous V-TAC-3Y, this will cover Brave staging, this will cover several of their pockets, this will cover upwards to several important, pipes. This will cover most of the important areas.
I think it's cool though, I think it's the moving mechanic, right? Like obviously, like it's gonna get plopped somewhere at the beginning of its implementation. Or maybe the CCP announces where it's going to begin before the patch hits. But I think it's cool because it gives nullsec residents ample time to prepare for them. And that's going to mean that less people will stay docked and they'll have time to prepare, and they will probably, undock and, PvP or do whatever content that they have that they know is going to come towards them, right? With this weather stuff. So I think it's actually, I don't know, I really like this change. I think a lot of content's going to come from it. I also like the fact that there are clear, like the warp disruption and warp scrambler, like that's obviously like an anti-kite thing. I think that's good. Like I like that a lot.
You made a really good point. I think the larger point is people with more experience, a little more theory crafting, and eventually some practice. But essentially the players who are more experienced are going to benefit from this sooner. They'll be able to fight in the weather with less surprises than newer players. But that's why they're in nullsec, I suppose, to really mix it up for the advanced players that are out there in the riskiest part of space. Maybe that's why you're not seeing it in high sec or even low sec.
Well, I think a lot of the implications of the weather would affect PvP content, like PvP engagements, as opposed to.
But there's the NPC part of it, right? Like mining faster and that sort of stuff.
Sure.
And there's your signal reply. It will not affect NPCs and structures.
CCP signal writes to Cable Uta. No, it won't affect NPCs or structures. They work like the wormhole effects in that way. And that question was actually posed by Art Bay. Art Bay?
Art J.
Art J. Sorry, dude. He was on the Sunday show, yes, just a couple days ago. Part of
someone should ask Signal if there's potential.
He's listening. You can ask him.
Weather storms to overlap one another if they move.
What's the question? Sorry, I interrupted you.
If the storms will overlap with one another, and if you can have 2 storms in one, 2 effects in one system, essentially.
That would actually be kind of cool, especially if they add more types of weather, and then you have multiple weather effects at once.
The answer.
They can.
They
awesome.
answer.
They can.
That's amazing.
Let me answer the question. The question was, can these storms overlap to create multiple effects? And the answer is yes. From CCP Signal, they can overlap. Yes.
Very cool. They did say that they were like, I expect them to remove different types of storms and replace them with different effects to keep the flavor going. That's what CCP Fozzie has already said that, I think. So instead of adding more storms to the game and more weather, the storms will change effects, I think. I think like the names will stay the same, for instance, but following patches, like the warp scrambler range might be like some E-War range. Like I don't see very many E-War effects here, but things like, I don't know, lock ranges or, E-War ranges, E-War strength. What else?
When you expand to say low sec and potentially high sec, it would make sense for them to roll out, say, 1 or 2 new actually types of systems, also to actually increase the future potential risk of these things colliding and doing the additive thing. I think ideally, when everything is populated with these weather systems, I think we should have something like 10 different weather systems.
Here's
the one I like the least is the gamma. For the other ones, I see the ups and the downs where you might want to change your doctrines or do something different or FC differently or incentivize PvE and hunting. But the gamma one, 90% reduction to shield and armor rep. On the fleet side of the coin, it's not really an upside to anything.
Well,
Logis is such a dominant part of all fleet combat.
Right. And so I think I've posed this question for a really long time in Eve, and I'm largely biased for being like a small gang person, but just they obviously want to reduce the effects of Logi, and people like it's 10% effective. So their goal is for people not to bring it, or of course it's penalized if people do bring it. And I think that devolves engagements into smaller ones, and I don't exactly disagree with it. The only thing I could possibly think of is that you just start to do F1 versus F1, and then fleets start to be these, you just have an EHP per DPS war, right? Or if you have like critical mass, like make sure you're controlling your alpha and only one thing at a time. But whatever, I don't think it's going to be that problematic. I think it's going to encourage groups to, the stats are going to be like you can expect the HP and the amount of HP that's regenerative on a single ship to be on that ship locally, right? So, if groups bring logic, you won't expect a battleship to tank more than it can in Python right on its own. Like, I think the no logi is pretty cool.
I think in small engagements, I agree, but imagine a Keepstar fight between Legacy and Imperium, and then this thing hits 90% reduction in Logi.
Pretty sure
that's going to disincentivize both sides.
Fozzie said earlier this doesn't affect Doomsday devices, if I read that correctly, or DDs from structures.
It doesn't.
Right. It's not the structures. My point is not about structures, but if you have a Keepstar fight where both sides are going to bring hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people, and then all of a sudden, Logis won't work in these systems.
Yeah, I can't see any.
Both sides will get a little upset at that.
Well, the thing is that you're going to see it moving towards the area. So you know what I mean? It's not going to be a surprise in a Keepstar fight. You're going to be able to plan and prepare for it. You're going to see the storm moving into that region, and perhaps you can and it's still random at the end of the day. So you can make predictions and inferences, and you'll need to plan accordingly. Like, this is all about players being adaptable. And I think the fact that you can see the storm moving and predict its movements, I don't think there are any players who can criticize the effects of the storm, and there's no reason not to adapt, because there's everything in this game. Like, the game is so figured out now. Like, throwing a wrench into things makes things so much more interesting, and you force players to adapt. Like, and they have time to. That's the thing. It's not like you're screwing over players in these Keepstar fights. Both sides are going to be able to see this coming and can adapt for it and adapt their strategy.
I like the way that Caleb put it. There's no bad weather. There's just
bad attire.
Bad attire, and the whole point is that I'm fine with the fact that you can't bring your cavalry when it's muddy. That's just like in real life. And then someone said that it's potentially for up to 2 weeks. I don't think it's going to be potentially that long, but I do think that it's cool that weather can take out a strategic move or something that was planned in something like a war or a skirmish. Yeah. I think that's a feature. And again, this is back to the volatility, right? This is the chaos we needed. This is the fact that you can't figure everything out. You can't plan everything perfectly in advance. You are victim to things like weather and force majeure. I think that's great.
Well,
By
and even
my
if you
grace.
plan for one weather, even if you plan for one storm, a second one might merge with it at the wrong time and mess up your calculations further. One thing I would like to ask, and maybe they can answer this while they're watching: do these storms do these storms like evolve up and out and then roam around for a while and then disappear? Do they mutate into different types of storms? How do they appear and reappear over time?
By my grace, I'll go ahead and answer the worries of some people who are worried about their Logi fleets now no longer being as useful. There is a change around to this. Instead of having your Logi repair, why don't you have your Logi remote cap transfer in the gamma ray? The remote cap transfer is not affected, as we can see, and instead you have your mainline DPS ships fit actual repairs. Therefore, instead of relying on the Logi to repair, you rely on the Logi to feed cap, and you rely on the local ships to repair themselves. And that would, well, bypass it. And it would
It's exactly what the point is, to adapt, right? It's meant to adapt. There's an adaptation possible in every situation. This is going to be so fun.
And if they think it's going to be difficult to adapt, well, I've already done part of the job for them on the spot right now. So, you think that's on.
If I wanted to do a keep star fight in this effect, I'd just go with Dreads since they don't use Logi anyway.
Another cool thing is that perhaps the fights over these keep stars and heavily contested areas might not be so long anymore. There could be an end to these like in a matter of an hour or two, right? When sides have lost things, like so many ships. Like you fed everything and it's like over finally and there's a fucking, or you bring things to reship.
Keep the language like kid friendly so that we don't get zapped by.
Oh, right. All right.
Fozzie answers my question here. I believe by default, the storms will keep roaming around with no expiry. When we want to change them out for new effects to keep things fresh and respond to feedback, we will wind old ones down and spin up new ones.
Yeah, basically this is just phase one. They will eventually be changed, right? That's pretty much what he's saying.
Yeah, I hope that becomes part of the natural life cycle so it feels even more natural than just creeping death around the map that you keep your eye on. Would like to see them come and go. Maybe it takes time for them to spin up so you can prepare, since it's going to surprise you in its location. But I think that would feel more like an ecosystem than just the lurking death clouds. Man, I'm like hyped. But there was a question that somebody said up there, and it was like, hey, Talking in Stations, let's ask the real question. How are players supposed to min-max this? And that's the point, isn't it?
That it's not going to be possible. Well, there will be adaptations that are min-max light, right?
I have already figured it out.
I'm pretty sure a lot of the other groups in the small gang community have figured it out. I've figured something out.
Sotios at double speed, boys.
That's Cable, so it's not surprising he figured it out so quickly.
He's already figured out a way to print disc. I've already figured out.
It's gonna be great.
I've already figured out what ships I'm going to go ahead and purchase, and for those of you currently doing things in the market, start dumping and buying the right ships right now.
I just had a rather stupid idea for the plasma ones. Rapid light armor tanked Orthrus.
No, it's a nerf to missile precision. You're gonna want to.
Yeah, it's a nerf to application, so you use the one that applies as the next size down.
Oh dear.
So Cable writes 25,800 DPS revelation. Okay. There's going to be some surprises in here. And it's going to make for some comedy. So, but we want that. We want more than anything, the thing I liked about Blackout was I didn't know how the story ended. And when you have a game that's been around this long with players that are this smart and experienced and stand on the shoulders of players that came before them, a lot of the game was figured out. So the more variation in terrain you can put into this game, the more surprise events you're going to have. And that makes for better stories and better storytelling.
There's just so much that can be done with this, so many ways that it can be iterated on. You can also add smaller effects that are larger and basically becomes like a biome effect, right? So it has a lot of reusability when it comes to this feature. Biomes is one of the things that we've talked about a lot when we talked about self-sufficiency, and all of nullsec pretty much became almost the same. But this kind of design can actually potentially flip that on its head completely.
Does this play into the scarcity rework that they're doing?
Yeah, that's what it does. Because if you get something like biomes where there's effects, not necessarily like these, but more like ecosystem-based effects, then that can be semi-permanent. It becomes almost like seasonality or special biomes, and this design can pretty much do the same thing. So it's really novel, and there's a lot of potential in it. And I do think that that's actually on the table, because I believe that Ritati talked about something similar.
Yeah, he said this would be the phase 3, right? There would be the dynamic systems.
This is the beginning or a part of the dynamic stuff, but this is just the dynamic stuff that does not necessarily affect direct resources, but it will affect resource gathering. So it is part of that phase.
Yeah. So they may not touch, make dynamic systems in the resources, or if they do, that'll even compound this issue of dynamicism.
Will this help leading con ships or hurt them more? I tell you, that ship is currently in a state of such a lackluster and incapability with the current metagame. I don't think it would affect it in any way possible.
It'll have a larger effect on those than on the Caracal Navy issue.
To answer this question from Pulse Infirmary, or Infinity, not Infirmary, Pulsar Infinity, he says, will these affect or apply to low sec and high sec? And the answer is yes, partially. The actual system, the eye of the storm, will always be in null sec, but the bleed off effect of 3 systems can go into low sec or high sec.
Rich, Aris, what do you guys think about T3s and all this? I feel like this might actually breathe a little bit more life into T3Cs again, because of especially their ability to be adaptable with their rigs, with their rig slot changeouts, and all of their subsystems that you can plug in and out depending upon whatever it is that you need to do. I see a lot of potential for those in particular.
I don't know. T3s are balanced now, in that they are incredibly general ships, right? They don't specialize in anything, and I consider them to be sometimes weak until you start pumping a lot of ISK into them.
Yeah, they're generally underwhelming right now.
I'm curious to see
what you want them to do.
I'm curious to see whether or not this will breathe some new life in the 2 T3Cs that have been seen as lackluster and less used, and that would be the Proteus and the Tengu.
The whole point is that in an ideal world, there would be a T3 counter to any of these storm types. The effectively an umbrella. So you could basically fit that, and then your ship would completely ignore all of the effects of the storm.
Why would that be ideal?
Because basically the whole point of wormhole dwelling and living in environments that are hostile is that you can then adapt, and that's the whole law of what T3 is about, right? The fact that you can adapt to the environment you're living in. And this would be something similar, that you have something that can counter any weather, and tying that into T3 would then incentivize wormhole dwelling and increase the value of the product that comes out of wormholes.
Wouldn't adapting be flying ships that are fit to take advantage of the system effects, like Pulsar flying Ham Drake Navy issues and shield tanked Valgord?
Well, the point is, it would be abusive if it negates only the downside and then gets all the upside. So it should kind of be able to be somewhere in between. This is why I'm saying that there should be an umbrella for each weather type. I just think that that would liven up and potentially be part of the restructuring of wormhole space, because if, as I've mentioned before, all these ISK faucets gets nerfed properly and removed from resource gathering space, then all that value would go onto these platforms, and they would become the specific thing that people would want to actually be able to counter weather.
Here's an answer from chat here that says, this is from Always Out of Mana. Right, T3Cs can re-rig on the fly subsystems on this got bumped on the fly. Such fleets could handle almost any weather theoretically. T3Cs are T3 cruisers, right?
Yes. Yeah,
Thank God
T3Cs are the cruisers.
Somebody renamed those because NC and PL used to call them armor hacks, right? They were being cheeky, like these are basically the armor hacks that.
Well, they were for a long time.
Hammer cats are what they were called.
Oh, hammer cats.
No, they were called A hacks. Like that's how they call them. NC. Like, grab your A hack. We're gonna go do this. And it was just,
is primary.
and it was the wrong thing to call them for a long time. So from now on, T3Cs are Tech 3 cruisers. Makes a lot
Plus
of sense.
25% shield HP. Villy, were you responsible for this? You and your shield supers?
No.
What are your thoughts on this change being implemented in the middle of a war?
Random is random.
Are you prepared for the bonus to armor Firestorm rolling into 1DQ in the middle of the up-and-coming Keep Star fight, whenever that might be?
If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Which Keepstar fight in 1DQ, though?
Well, we'll see which ones get affected by the weather, and, we'll see what happens when the pool gets closed.
There are 3 Keepstars to fight over in 1DQ.
So do you think this will bring new value to T3Cs?
I think so. I think that I would say, especially with solo or maybe small gang content, I could definitely see the potential for it. Just the simple fact that so when Surgical Strike happened, they nerfed resistance modules, but they didn't nerf rigs. T3Cs have the unique capability of being able to rip and interchange rigs without actually losing them, which means that in the instance in which you're doing a nullsec roam, you've got a what is the word? You've got an Abyssal Firestorm or whatever the Plasma Firestorm one, which gives you minus 25% resist. Oh well, you plug in a rig to fill in your Firehole, and then you go to another one that has the kinetic resist loss. So you plug in a rig to switch those around. I think that particular gimmick is going to be really helpful, and you may even see Loki fleets come back on a larger scale with nullsec people, or with nullsec groups in general, because Lokis are a strong all around T3C in themselves. They can do everything kind of well, and they're pretty good in larger numbers. So I would be interested to see if those end up coming back to a certain extent, even in larger fleet battles themselves, just to have for FCs to have the flexibility in order to kill the things that they want to go after.
I don't think it'll change too much from a nullsec perspective. If I have to have a shield Loki and an armor Loki, I'll just have 2 Lokis. I just don't see people or fleets moving around with multiple fits and rigs in their cargo as they cross storms and asking your fleet to switch your rigs and fits around.
We should put a big sign on the stream matter wall that says weather will be shown on the actual map.
Yeah, I saw that question come up. I was about to answer it, but
and it is important, right? It's really important, and it's going to be asked a million times from now, I think.
Yeah, sure. It'll be on the map.
It should also
the new map or the old one.
Well, it should go in the dev block showing how it will be actually shown in the map when it launches, right?
I don't think chaos will extend to the weather being hidden, right? That that would be a little too scary. So I think you'll see it on the map. It'll probably be the in-game map, and it'll probably be API-able, and so you'll be able to see it on .land and that sort of thing. It would be cool if there was some...
It's going to be awesome to see .land actually implement the weather girl system. That would be nice.
It would be cool if there was some storm that you couldn't see, like some kind of invisible storm that you would just run into, and all your electronics go nuts.
Matter of check Eve local and check that image.
Check Eve local. I see it. Is that something you... What is that?
That is a True Stanchion Warp Disruptor with a 188 kilometer point range.
Is that
and it's not even abyssal.
So that's theoretical?
That is how it's going to be with the 100% warp disruptor range.
Okay.
So at this point, if you're fighting in one of those strong storms, you might as well drop the point from your interceptor. No, you drop the point off your interceptor. Have a scram, a micro warp drive, and an afterburner because, well.
So that's a 190 kilometer point. That's pretty good.
Before abyssal.
I mean, there still exist counters to all this stuff, right? You can bring damps, and then suddenly the EWAR Rangers are much reduced.
Good God, this storm will be ushering a golden age for afterburner ships and afterburner usage.
Well, sure, but also recall that webs are sort of in the middle between these long scrams and long disruptions, so
they're going to fall behind, though.
Quite prevalent.
The webs don't get the webbing bonus on this.
Webs won't be able to reach the same as a scram, so scram will actually reach farther than webs do on like a what's it called, a Huguenot rapier.
Right.
These Erasmus scrams will actually reach longer. Means all MWDing is just going to be dead in the water instantaneously.
Well,
and with the signature radius reduction.
You can just kill these Arazus though, right? They're pretty paper. They're like not exactly tanky.
Teddy, I love your message there. I'm going to put it up on screen.
I mean, then you also got to take into account though, Ars, what do you do about intercept? They're going to get a shield amount bonus. They're going to get a 25% signature reduction, so they're harder to kill, and they're going to have a more than 30 or 40 kilometer scram.
Yeah,
how are you going to stop them?
That's nuts.
Like, how are you ever going to roam again if literally all it takes is one guy from the local group that you're roaming into has a scram shield interceptor? You're just instantly caught, no matter what. And there's unless you're literally able to instantly alpha him off the grid, which you can't because he now has a reduced signature radius.
Well,
interceptors are going to be dumbass strong.
God forbid.
Sure, but it's time to get creative here. Like things like your typical, it's not going to be a matter of things like damage application or like you're going to see things like damps or perhaps ranged energy neutralizers, right? Like those are going to be incredibly strong. Like nothing's, you know what I mean?
You can't nude a scram off a scepter. You just can't.
Yeah, that's true. At 40 kilometers.
It's 0.1 gigajoule for a scram on an interceptor, so it doesn't matter.
That's actually going to be pretty fucking disgusting. Well, their lock ranges are reduced, right?
No. There's no lock range reduction.
You can reduce their lock ranges.
Well, yeah, sure, but
God forbid now. Well, here's a problem: you can't kill what you can't even lock in the first place. If that's 180 plus point range, there's a limited amount of ships I can even lock that far. So if you get points at that range and you try to burn at them,
you can't leave.
You can't leave. If they're faster than you, there's nothing you can do. You are helpless.
You can't even MJD out of
it. We're getting into a little bit too much EFT warrior details now, aren't we?
It won't be EFT warrior for very long. We'll turn it into reality. We will turn it to reality.
I was letting it go a bit because I do want them to have their space, because you're seeing what EVE players do when new features come out. They're like they're evolving when they talk about these ideas and some of the things that are going to be crazy, and a lot of this will be
hilarious.
Yeah, they'll be hilarious. They'll be people will be like, "How in the world did that happen?" And it's like, this is how it happens. The feature drops, people figure it out quickly, and they go and they take advantage of the first mover.
But that's kind of my point. The point is that this is gonna benefit locals in nullsec. Like that specific. I'm obviously only right here focusing on the gamma effect, which will have tremendous benefit to locals and literally eliminate the ability for small gangs to roam around. Because all it takes is so normally when Horus roams around, for instance, I assume he knows what's going to happen. They're going to show up with some, a Balgorn and some other like really, really, really cancerous ships that are like brick tanked and so on, potentially even caps to support them and logistics and so on and so forth. And now they have the issue of they literally can't even, like, normally they would fight to stay on grid, which I assume is correct. And now they won't even be able to do that because unless they bring super highly specific things, they will never be able to do that. And even if they have them, if they get past a certain range, they'll just be locked onto the grid.
All this is temporary. The storm will pass.
Of course, but that's my point. It's a moving zone.
This is not blackout. It's not going to be oppressive because it's not going to be everywhere at once, right? So even if it's horribly unbalanced and it disrupts a lot of stuff, it's still going to be temporary and it's still going to be something that is open for change because Fozzie just said it will roam for a while and then they will change these numbers, right?
Mm-hmm. By the way, I'm pointing out the meme on screen is for wormholers who feel like their specialness was all irrelevant. It's hilarious.
The problem, Caleb, is you're going to have 8 of these storms. That means there's going to be at least 2. There's going to be 2 gamma storms, right? And they're going to have what was it? You said 3 systems out from the center.
They can be pretty big, but the point is that this is nothing compared to the disruption, oppression, and mess of blackout. This is exactly.
I'm not comparing it to blackout whatsoever.
No, just
I'm saying
Eve, and it's not. It's actually improving it.
Well, for those who
that's a blatant statement.
Let Cable finish his point, though.
Caleb, what I'm trying to say is we're going to now have 2 moving zones of a center with 3 or 4 systems, whatever it was, in every direction.
3.
Where small gangs effectively get completely eliminated by the simplest thing as an interceptor or an Arazu, which always get brought by locals when they are defending their space from roaming gangs. Those 2 zones will effectively be no-fly zones for roaming gangs.
Alternatively, those zones will be no-fly gangs for the locals.
Depends on who can anticipate the other side and make the first move.
Every situation is play and counterplay. There is always a situation where, yes, the locals can bring this, but you can bring that. That's what weather is about, creating dynamic environments where the situations are different, where people have to think and adapt in new and interesting ways.
And as for the locals, if you are somebody who loves to do PvE, I would suggest you pull your finger out when the exotic matter storm comes out, because you're not doing any ratting if you have a active tank ship that repairs or shield buffs.
It would be nice to see.
It's rep cycle time. It makes you tank more.
It would be nice to see locals react to roaming fleets.
Oh,
it would be nice.
My God,
it's a boost. It reps faster.
Oh my God.
Well, I mean, the limiting resource there is capacitor, right? That's the same.
Oh, yeah, of course. But I mean,
wouldn't do it.
It's the opposite. I completely didn't realize that.
All right, I'm glad you.
It's for you to manage it.
That's my voice. Is that my voice breaking up? Yeah. Okay, so I'm glad you're figuring it out. This is great fun. I will say it was nice to see locals be able to react in a different way than just dropping a bunch of supers. I mean, this may break up that meta of one answer for all questions. And I'm sure there's multiples of situations now that are going to change with depend on the weather. But remember, you can always wait out the weather.
That's a nice landing quote.
Dock up for a few days and play a different game.
No, play the same game, play in a different ship.
Or go 4 systems over.
Yeah.
There are a few other things in there. So when you see a negative magnitude on those percents on the table there, they're not always. Some of them are actually advantageous. So, what is it? A decrease in capacitor recharge time means you regen cap faster.
decrease in cycle time, especially.
Yeah, for the case of
that we don't have seasons yet, but now we have weather storms, which means it might be a better idea to do some, say, mining as the storm passes through than it would be to do your usual ratting. So your behavior can change. You don't have to go and sit it out. But I think it would be neat if the next level of this gets to be like a climate thing where this is the season to do a lot of harvesting, pretty much.
This is why I mentioned seasons and biomes. This is something that could be the next stage of this. And again, this is an experimental phase, right? They are bringing it in a little bit in the extreme fashion, I think. I think some of those numbers, as the chat has already proven, are a little bit, what the fuck? And that's going to be open for change and tweaks. And I think the end result is potentially amazing and will just be so healthy for the game.
Well, could CCP end up using this as well to attempt, at least, to control behavior? Like, if you make it so mining is not as easy, and you just throw more of these storms out in regions, say, that have more mining than they like seeing, then you have that. Or you make something where PvP ends up being a bit better, you put that in an area where there's no PvP happening.
That's exactly what I've been. This has been said for quite some time now. Is that the sort of the root issue of the game is that player culture or player behavior is what bars a lot of engagements happening, and a lot of what old Eve used to be was just watching spaceships explode. And this is what you just said there is that CCP's incentivizing your players to do different things or sort of encouraging them to do different types of content. So I'm happy that it's interesting you say that, because that's exactly the sort of thing that has been on my mind for quite some time.
And these are geographical, right? So they're going to be force majeure and not necessarily something that I think players should be able to interact with directly. But you have all these other systems where you can adapt, which is basically your ships and your structures, and ideally also things like your ADMs and all of that stuff. And when these things start getting pretty much into a system that's complete, I think the result is going to be that everything will be more dynamic, we'll call it chaotic, but you have to adapt to your local environment, to your local weather, to your local ecosystem, and no two areas of space will be the same. There will be similarities, and the adaptation options will be open to pretty much flatten things, but that's up to player activity and player assets in space.
There's something here that Guarav points out that Hilmar said a while ago. Weather is a very good archetype of what it should be. Like weather in nature, we as humans are obviously engineered to respond to that kind of chaotic pattern, which is still relatable. Like, when the rain is coming. Also, there are seasons, which is going into the quadrant concept.
Yeah, and things like punctuated equilibrium and all of those buzzword bingo things. But it is a factual thing, and this design points towards that direction. This is adding some of the complexity that's been needed for a while.
Yeah, and one more question here from Jojo. With what Killaby said yesterday, do you believe PanFam will come out from Soct or Quarius? And if so, doesn't that mean that the regional gate fighting is just fun sparring at this point? While waiting for PanFam to help Legacy break in? I think that guy is on a different topic.
Yeah, I think he's on the wall.
Yeah, I think we have Villy here for for that topic. Yeah. Billy?
I don't expect Villy to give us future plans of where he's going to invade next.
Yeah, and people are going to ignore them anyways.
Matterall just giggles in the side. I know
think
what's going on.
Billy's planning to invade Delve. That's where I think he wants to go.
I don't know. We could go on for this weather thing for a while, but I think we'll leave it here. You guys can come into Talking Stations and discuss it further. Obviously, local chat's going crazy about this. But real quick, we need to wrap up. But before we do that, I'm wondering if Billy can tell us something about the state of the war before we take off.
All right. As it goes, in Fountain, all initiative iHubs are now dead, leaving only a small portion of Goonswarm and Bastion iHubs in the south and south central Fountain remaining. Obviously, there's still TCUs all over the place, but TCUs are worthless. First Keepstar in Fountain was hit yesterday, the J5A Keepstar, and we'll see how the response to that timer is today, or is it tomorrow? I can't remember.
Hard to keep track, huh?
Aquarius is continuing to be under siege. Lots of iHub trading and random iHub losses and gains over the place, mostly in north central Fountain, where goons are mostly considering it a floodplain region. Period basis border is still holding strong. Counterattacks into Estuary Paragon Soul are tapering off a little bit, although there's still lots of structure spam. Del, for the most part, is hardened and doing fine, although obviously there's basically zero industrial / PvE related activity going on in the region due to the levels of harassment being sustained. Forces are continuing to move and prep and so on, and that's kind of the state of the war at the moment.
I have a follow-up question that's
Great,
related
thanks.
to both. Really, what do you think this will mean, the weather stuff, for the war effort? Is it going to potentially delay it or push it fast?
It'll have no effect in all reality. If there's a storm in the area that's advantageous, then, people will try to take advantage of it. If there's a storm in the area that's disadvantageous, people will try to ignore that area until the storm passes. Like, the thing about the storms is, for the most part, they're neutral, right? Like, they don't care what you do; they're just there, and it's another tactical element to play around. It's in real life warfare, the environment is a massive factor, and obviously in EVE warfare, the environment should be at least a little bit of more of a factor as well. So I think that's what CCP is going for, and I don't think anybody thought that these storms would play any real. How do I put this? I don't think anybody thought the storms would be, one of those things where they're bad for the state of the game or the war in itself.
Would be interesting if your territory was on fire. Would the rain put you out? We can leave on that poetic note.
That was terrible, Matterall.
Yeah. It's meant to be. Anyway, thank you guys very much. We're going to send you over to, how about Ron for a surprise?
Ron streaming? Jeez, what day is it? Is it ending in Hawaii?
And we will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks everyone for coming, showing up, and talking about this. And thank the devs for talking in chat. Appreciate it. Look forward to more information on this amazing new feature. Thanks, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.